Hi, algebra students. We're going to learn a new method to solve quadratic equations. This one is called completing the square. It is built on what we learned in section 10.4, which is the example that I have shown to you right here, where you have some term being squared, and we have to isolate that term and then use square roots. So we would divide both sides by 5, which would leave x minus 4 squared equals 4. And then we could take square roots like we did in section 10.4 of both sides to get x minus 4 equals plus or minus 2. And now we'd have to add 4 to both sides, which means we have to add 4 to positive 2, and we have to add 4 to negative 2. So we'd get x equals 6 and x equals 2 as solutions. So if you feel really comfortable with this method by taking square roots, completing the square is a method of transforming an equation or an expression into one of these types of equations where we can simply solve it by taking the square root at the very end. This can be used for expressions of this form, x squared plus bx. So completing the square, again, here's the form that we're using, x squared plus bx. The first step that you have to do is you have to take half of the coefficient of x, which is b in the equation. You take half of that, and then step 2, you square that half of b, whatever half of b was, you square it, and we add that to our expression. That is going to create a special expression that would factor into a binomial squared. Let me show you an example. So x squared plus 10x, we need to figure out what c is. We need to figure out what we could add to the end of this to make it a perfect square. So we're going to do half of b, so b over 2 squared, and this expression b is 10. So 10 over 2 squared. 10 over 2 is 5, so we're just going to square 5, and we get that c equals 25. So now we can take this expression and add this c value that we got, so plus 25, and this expression, this trinomial, is a perfect square trinomial. If we were to factor this using box method, we would get the same binomial multiplied by itself. So we've transformed this expression into one where it factors into a perfect square, trinomial that factors into a binomial squared. Let me show you some more examples. Number 1, x squared plus 8x plus c. We're going to figure out what c is, and then we're going to transform it into a binomial squared. I want you to pay close attention to the second term in these binomials as we go through the examples. So to figure out c, again, b over 2 squared. B in this problem is 8, so 8 over 2 squared. 8 over 2 is 4, so 4 squared is going to be 16. So we're going to add 16 to the expression. Replace c with 16. And now this is a perfect square trinomial. If we were to factor it, it would factor into x plus 4 squared. Number 2, we're going to do the same thing. We have to figure out what c equals first, so b divided by 2 squared. b is negative 12. So that means we have negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6 squared. Negative 6 squared is positive 36. So we're going to add positive 36, or replace c with positive 36. And this one is going to factor into x minus 6 squared. This would be our binomial squared. Now, I told you to pay close attention to these second terms. Let me point something out about these second terms right here, this 4 and this negative 6. We did not just grab these out of thin air. Every single time, these came from right here, which was what we got when we took half of b. Half of negative 12 was negative 6. Half of 8 was 4. So every time in your binomial squared, that second term is going to be what half of b was. Let's do one more and we'll finish up. So let's figure out c. So b divided by 2 squared. B in this problem is 3, so 3 over 2 squared. Since that does not simplify to an integer, we'll just leave it a fraction and square it, which means c is going to be 9 over 4. And let's add that. And although this looks kind of messy with that fraction in there at the end, we can transform this into a binomial very, very easily based on what I just told you about this second term. This second term was what half of b was, which is 3 over 2. So this binomial squared would just be x plus 3 over 2 squared. And this is the first thing that we have to learn in order to solve equations by completing the square. Hope this helps you.